everybody, it's Miss Phoebus, and I'm back with another ancient American math lesson for you. We're talking today about the Mayans. The Mayan civilization lived in Central America, including South Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, between 2500 BC and 1500 AD. They had a writing system, a hieroglyphic writing system, similar to what we saw with the Olmecs, and similar to what we see with the Egyptians. They also built elaborate temples and pyramids and had a complex social order, just like the Olmecs. Remember I said the Olmecs started a lot of this stuff? The Olmecs and the Mayans, they're really, really closely related to each other because the Olmecs influenced the Mayans. More than even the Egyptians or the Indian astronomers, the Mayan priest astronomers were totally dedicated to astrology. It totally encompassed their whole entire life. They were almost obsessed with it. We know a lot about the astronomy in their time because they were basically always looking up. They were always looking at the stars, trying to figure out what was going on with this. So they studied astronomy, mathematics, they calculated highly accurate calendars, they predicted eclipses and other astronomical events. So this is a calendar, or this is a cartoon that came out in 2009, but in 2012 there was a big uproar about the Mayan calendar ending, and so this is a comic that goes based on that. But their Mayan calendars were round, so this is a pretty interesting depiction of what was going on maybe back in that time. I don't know. Could have happened. So here is a picture of a Mayan calendar. Look at the color. Isn't the color pretty? They like to put guys in the middle with their mouths open and their tongues hanging out and stuff like that. So it's not surprising that Mayans observed the stars to chart the seasons. In common with most of the world's greatest cultures, they developed a calendar of their own. Now we know that they were probably influenced by the Olmecs and their long calendars and their round calendars. But they tried to generate even more accurate measurements and accurate times. So they wanted to improve upon those calendars that the Olmecs already had. The Mayan vigesimal system for their calculations, a base 20, again, something that the Olmecs did as well. So rather than using 10, like we do, where we use 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, they used 1, 20, 400, 8,000, 1,600. That was their base 20 number system. And this was inherited from the Olmec civilization, as well as their bar and dot. So they only had 3 symbols. 0 was represented by a shell shape. 1 was a dot, 5 was a bar, and then addition and subtraction were relatively simple based on adding up dots and bars. The Indian 0, and by Indian 0 we mean not the New World Indians, the Native Americans, but the Indians from India. So India was for a long time thought to have created the first 0. So that was widely seen as one of the greatest innovations in human history, as it's used in the cornerstone of mathematics and physics, and you're able to do things with technology. You can't have computers if your computer doesn't know what a 0 is. So in the old world, 0 was pretty much fully developed around 5th century AD, although there's disputes as to whether this knowledge was inherited from the Babylonians. And so this is actually an Indian document, and that's the first recorded use that we know of 0 being used. But the Mayans were able to develop their own concept of 0 at least 100 years earlier than India, and pretty much they were not held back from the old world not knowing what 0 was. They were isolated geographically, but they were still able to figure out what to do with 0. And again, they had help from the Olmecs as well. But Mayans really took off with the ideas. So Mayans considered some numbers more sacred than others. One of these special numbers was 20, again, because it represented the number of fingers and toes on a human being. Another special number was 5, because it represented the number of digits on a hand or a foot. But 13 was also sacred. We usually think of 13 as a bad number, but 13 was sacred because that was the number of the original Mayan gods. Another sacred number was 52, representing a number of years when what they called a bundle, which is similar to what we call a century. It's the same kind of idea. And then another number, 400, was sacred because that was the number of Mayan gods of the night. So they had a lot of sacred numbers that they felt were important. They did play a game, and I do have a video of it because some people recreated it. So remember that death ball game that we talked about with the Olmecs? They play a game of this. Now, this is not as violent as death ball. The balls are still made of rubber, more latex, but they're not as heavy. So it's called, let's see, they play a ball game called Pocketalk that wasn't just for recreation and religious devotion. It was also used to settle disputes between warring factions and noblemen. The stakes were high, however, as losing could end with the losing team's leader or entire team being sacrificed to the god. So even though it's not death ball because the ball isn't going to kill you, it is death ball because you're going to die if you lose. So you can watch this. Here they're playing Pocketalk. And you can watch it. I have the video up for you to watch as well. So this is not out of bounds. But they have those courts, if you can tell, it's the same kind of courts that the Olmecs had. And you see the people sitting up in the stands? Isn't that cool? So anyway, so Pocketalk is a cross of football and basketball played with a rubber ball. The object of the game is to get the ball through a stone hoop, which that's why I wanted to play the video. Here is the stone hoop, and you want to try to get the ball through the hoop, but you can only pass or shoot the ball using your thighs or your hips. That's it. Nothing else. No other body parts, no chest, no elbows, no head, just your thighs and hips. Now, what happens if you use those? I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure, like, were you just supposed to get the most, or were you supposed to get to a certain number first? I don't know about that, but I do think it's interesting that if you lose, you'll lose your life. I find that interesting. So the Mayans, like other ancient civilizations, they had medicine, which was a mix between religion and science. But we do know that they knew a lot about plants in the area, and so they were able to use that and work that into their medicinal practices as well. Medicinal activities tend to be practiced by priests who inherited their position and received extensive training. For the Mayans, health and ill health was a matter of being in balance or out of balance. So balance equaled health, imbalance was sickness. They believed that this was always controlled by the diet, gender, and age of the person. Their balance was. They knew about stitches and used human hair to suture wounds. They regularly made casts to speed the healing of fractures and other bone breakages. They had dentists who would put in tooth fillings. They had witch doctors that made prosthetics. So you're talking about fake arms and legs and stuff like that if you lost a limb. These prosthetics were made from jade and turquoise, and they used obsidian to make cuts, which would make sharp cuts. And so we have some nice art here about their medicine. So we do know about these things. And so if you have medicine, you have logical thought paths and things like that, and that is your mathematics as well. So the Mayans are doing lots of things: astronomy, calendar making. I like to throw the death ball in there. I think that that's just kind of fun. Something that they're known for. And then they're building pyramids again, like the Olmecs. They're practicing medicine. So they're doing lots of interesting things. And then I do have a video on the Mayans, so you can watch that. And then the demise of the Mayan civilization is a mystery. Again, we don't know what happened exactly, but about 900 AD they abandoned their cities. But we do know that the Mayan people did not completely disappear because their ancestors are all throughout Mexico. They're in the Yucatan, they're in different regions. They're also in Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. So for some reason they abandoned where they lived. We're not sure why, but they didn't like get wiped out completely. Um, we do know that for sure. Their descendants are still around. So that is the Mayan. So you do have an assignment that goes along with this. Make sure you complete that. Watch the videos. Get to know the Mayans. They're pretty interesting group of people. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye. YouTube.